Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ahead of the Curve podcast. I'm your host, Chris Chaudhry, and I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic today. Today's episode, I want to talk about Barcelona. So, I've been watching a lot of La Liga recently on Hulu. I'm partially a Real Madrid fan. They're one of my favorite teams. I was a Cristiano Ronaldo fan. I still am. I'm a Messi fan. I'm a Neymar fan. Those are the players that got me into the sport. I love watching them. Two of them play for Barcelona, the subject of today's episode, and I've been watching their new signings: Adama Traore, Ferran Torres, and Aubameyang. Absolutely killing it, unreal for Barca so far. Their midfield has been class under Xavi as well, and they're certainly getting back into the groove of things. Getting back to where they were, a couple years ago, where they were arguably the best team in the world, best team of all time. But if you follow the footballing world, you know that they almost fell off, and that's extremely concerning, especially because Barcelona are considered titans in the footballing world. They're this great historic franchise, not franchise, but this great historic team, club that have just been dominant through so many decades, and there was a good chance we were going to see Barcelona no longer be that, especially with the departure of Messi. They didn't really have any big name stars to rely on. Granted, they had Depay, they had Griezmann, but he left a little bit ago. De Jong. Nonetheless, these guys aren't Messi, they're not Neymar, they're not Suarez, Xavi, Iniesta, any of those guys. But the reason for this was, even though Barcelona know how to play football on the pitch, they're incredible. Business-wise, in the office, they're not great. So, as of October, I believe, the president of Barcelona said that the club is $1.57 billion US dollars in debt. That is very, very concerning. And I want to make a point that that doesn't just mean the football club. That includes the basketball club. There's a Barcelona Entertainment with under that holding name of Barcelona. And it's almost shocking because, like I used the word earlier, titans. That's what they were. They were titans. They were untouchable. I feel like there was nothing that could stop them. No one that could stop them because of how well they played together, chemistry-wise, and they were just so great. And they're supposed to be this great dynasty that's supposed to always be at the top, but right now they are. I'm going to check really quickly. They just won 4-0 against Atletico Club. Nonetheless, they're fourth in La Liga. At one point they were far below that. But, when you think FC Barcelona, you think the greats. You think, top two positions in La Liga. And there was a little scare that some people had that Barcelona were going to be on the verge of relegation to the second division in Spain. Obviously, that doesn't look like the case anymore, but at the same time, I want to talk about how they're not great business-wise, and the struggles that they've had when it comes to signings and financial stuff and that kind of stuff. So, and how that's preventing them from becoming a dynasty, like we're seeing with Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, teams that are constantly at the top year in and year out. And how do you maintain that? The most, being the most dominant club, being the most dominant team in your league. And I want to start by defining what a dynasty is, or giving some characteristics of a dynasty. You have to remember that a dynasty must constantly be evolving, right? You cannot be around the single play style or the single player, no matter how good they are. Okay, Messi was great. They built around Messi for almost 2 decades, right? But he's no longer at the club, you cannot rely on the style of play that was built around Messi anymore. You cannot just buy players to replace, the players that leave, right away. You have to give them time to learn, develop, watch, be mentored by the starters so that when their time comes, they know how to play, they know how to fit the style of play. And you do this by either young signings from other teams, like, we see teams do it with Ajax all the time. They bring in young Ajax players, and those players then, they might not start right off the bat at their new club, but they are still, they're learning behind whoever is in front of them on the depth chart. And yeah, so that's that. And you can also do it through academy players. Bring kids up from the U23, U19, and when they get that, when they watch these players, how they move on and off the ball, their mentality, they adopt their footballing IQ. And I want to highlight where that went wrong with Barcelona. They had one success, but after that it was atrocious. So they built this incredible team around Messi, Neymar, Suarez, Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets. All right, those six were unbelievably good. Busquets still plays. The other five are gone. Xavi, he's the manager, but he's no longer playing. So the one success was when they brought in Ivan Rakitic. He was still at the club when Xavi was playing, but he wasn't. He was getting minutes off the bench. He was like the first guy off the bench or whatever. And he wasn't, just brought in to fill the role once Xavi left. He was brought in to learn how Xavi played, learn the mannerisms, the IQ of Xavi. And then by the time Xavi left, there's now this hole that needs to be filled. Rakitic could fill that hole easily because he knows what the role of the person that holds that position is. Right? That was their one success. But before that, they didn't. Other than that, they didn't have anything. I don't think we can think of any quality backups that were doing this. Right? There was no one to be the backup for Messi or Neymar or Suarez. What they did was they bought new players. For example, when Iniesta left in 2018, they just brought in Arturo Vidal to replace Iniesta. Now, you're taking a player who's in, footballing style A and has footballing style A, that's how he plays, and throwing him into footballing style B, telling him to play the role of player B. Right? He doesn't know how to do that. He hasn't adjusted to it all the way, and it takes time to adjust. It's not, 1 or 2 day thing, 1 week thing. This needs to be built over time, months, maybe even years. Right? And looking back, Arturo Vidal is not at the club anymore, which just goes to show that, he didn't work out. He wasn't good enough, so to speak. Similarly, when Neymar left, they brought in Coutinho to replace him. Similarly, not a great success. If you watched Coutinho at Liverpool, he was incredible. He was a magician with the ball. But when he came to Barcelona, all that kind of went away. And we're left wondering, why is this? Why is Coutinho not doing it? Obviously, he's not Neymar, right? Neymar was incredible. He's arguably one of the best Barcelona players of all time. But, you have to understand that the reason it didn't work is because you have player A in Coutinho replacing player B in Neymar, right? It's not the same player. It's not the same style. You need to either A, adjust the style of play of the whole team so that Coutinho can thrive, or you have to allow Coutinho the ability to adjust his style of play in order to, fill that role properly. And I want to talk about some other quality players that are getting thrown into a brand new 11 play style without really any chance to develop. Thinking about Griezmann, he had to deal with the position change. Remember, at Atletico Madrid, he's playing as a center forward, a striker, and now he's being pushed out to the left wing because Coutinho isn't working. So he's playing left wing, not only changing his position, he's also going through with three different managers. While Griezmann was there, he played under three different managers. That's tough because three different managers is three different playing styles, right? And now that you're getting adjusted to this new position, you're having to adjust your play style to fit this new manager, and then doing it again, and then doing it again. And then similarly, I'll think about Frenkie de Jong and Memphis Depay. They're considered flops at Barcelona because they're not playing well. Well, in my opinion, I don't necessarily think they're not playing well. I just don't think that they fit the role yet. I think they have the potential to do so. Maybe not de Jong, but certainly maybe Depay. I don't know. Maybe he could compete with Aubameyang to be the starting striker. I don't know. And I'm not even going to bring up Dembele. He's just constantly been hurt. Very injury prone. Obviously, it's not really his fault. He can't really control that. But at the same time, I do think that, had Dembele been healthy, he would have faced a similar situation to all these other guys, right? And we see it not just with Barcelona but other clubs too. Eden Hazard. I talked about how Real Madrid is a very good dynasty and all that, but they have their flaws too, right? Eden Hazard, he was brought in. He doesn't fit the role that they're looking to fill very well. I think we can all agree on that. Similarly, even Ronaldo. Granted, Ronaldo's kind of old, but if you look at Ronaldo's heat charts, he likes to come down to the left side of the pitch a lot. Meaning, he feels naturally, drawn to the left side of the pitch. Maybe play him as a winger, but since he joined Juventus, he's been playing as a center forward and as a poacher, which is a very different play style to what he's used to. And maybe that's why we don't see the same success from him. Similarly, Saul on Chelsea. He played for Atletico Madrid. He wasn't a class player. He wasn't a top midfielder. But he was good. He was a solid, dependable choice. But now that he's being thrown into, Chelsea's mix and a different pace in the Premier League and a different play style in the Premier League, it is, probably difficult for him to adjust, especially because of who he's competing against. Mateo Kovacic, and N'Golo Kante. They only play two central midfielders. But it's also, how are you going to beat them out when you're already not as good as them, but now you have to, play in a different style? It's like, I think this is the best way to put it, right? You study, chapter 1, but your test is actually on chapter 2. That's what it's like for a lot of these players. A lot of people were saying that Jadon Sancho was a flop at Manchester United. He wasn't scoring goals. He wasn't being very involved. He's coming from the Bundesliga. He's adjusted to the Bundesliga style of play. Now he's being thrown into the Premier League style of play. Granted, he's adjusted incredibly well now, but you can't expect it to happen right away. Some players can adjust really well. They have really good debuts. They're refreshed after joining a new club. Their mentality kind of changes. There's a lot of factors that play into it, but at the end of the day, I don't think you can expect any players, to be able to adjust on the fly. The minute they get there, you can't expect them to be able to fit the role of someone they're meant to replace exactly the same way. And I want to talk about some more examples, successful examples at that. Bayern, for a while, they had Thiago playing as the central midfielder, and Kimmich was the right back. He played with Thiago. He watched Thiago style of play and the IQ that Thiago developed, and when it was time for Thiago to go to Liverpool, there he was. He knew exactly what his duties were, and he used the passing range that he has to his advantage, the same way Thiago did during his time there. Real Madrid, looking at what they have Toni Kroos and Luka Modric. They're 33, 36 years old, on the verge of retirement. And even though they're still consistently getting playing time, they have Federico Valverde and Camavinga on the bench, who are, learning from them, understanding their style of play. So when it comes time for them to fill the role after they retire or leave or are no longer with the club for whatever reason, they're prepared to do so. And they're not being thrown into the deep end. Liverpool, even though they have a strong midfield in Henderson and Fabinho, they're not terribly old either. They're not really near the age of retirement. They've started that replacement development process with Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, two very different players to Henderson and Fabinho style, but still they're learning how they play, and when the time comes, they're going to be ready to fill that role for them. So my advice to Barcelona is don't just look for the best player. Don't just throw money to the manager and say, hey, get the best that money can buy. You should say, hey, get the best that can fill that role, right? On TikTok, I'm seeing this one account. They I don't know how to describe it. They show like a little chart, a circle chart, and it shows like the strengths of players on a team, and then they compare it to the strengths of other players, and they find the best replacement for them. You need to, like, if Chelsea were to replace Conte, all right, what would they look for? High defensive work rate, creating a lot of chances, interceptions, physicality, things like that. That's the role, that's the play style of Conte. Let's find a central midfielder that has a similar play style, right? I don't know that, Frankie de Jong could fill that role instead of Conte. I don't know that, let me think. I'm trying to think of other scenarios, right? I don't know that even though Ibrahim Konate is a really good center back or a defender in general, I don't know that he could replace Sergio Ramos or he could replace Virgil van Dijk when their time is up and no longer with the club, right? That's the questions you need to ask yourself, right? Does this player fit the role that is being replaced at close to a high enough level as their predecessor, right? I think one of the best examples of not working is Jack Grealish, right? I think the idea was bringing Jack Grealish to play as an attacking midfielder. Not really working out for them, right? Jack Grealish doesn't fit that role well. So Barcelona, going back to Barcelona, they're in a rebuilding stage, right? They have a good young core in central midfield built around Pedri, Gavi, so on and so forth. How do you move from here, right? These guys are incredibly young. They're going to be here for a while. That's if they decide they want to re-sign. How do you keep them at Barcelona? But if they decide to leave, or when it is time for them to leave and they're no longer at the club, how do you move on from that? How do you move forward without taking too much of a toll, right? When you lose Xavi and Iniesta, right, it doesn't matter who you have behind them. It's very, very difficult to not take a hit from that because these are, some of the best central midfielders in the history of football. Pedri and Gavi, they're good. They're going to go down as great footballers. How are you going to be able to move on from them without it affecting you? Let me think. Chelsea going to be able to move on from having Cesar Azpilicueta as a wing back and a center back, right? He's been an incredibly good player for Chelsea. Are we relying on Reece James to do that? Are we bringing in someone new? What are we doing there? How is Juventus supposed to adjust to Dybala possibly leaving, right? Are they, ask yourself the question, is my team, the team that I support, looking at long-term success or short-term success, right? I see a lot of very, very short-term success with Chelsea, and that's my biggest fear. They're my favorite club. I don't see them, holding a very high Champions League spot 2 years from now. I don't. Maybe Europa League. I see them being in the Europa League, but I don't know that I'll see them in the Champions League in 2 years, right? Manchester United, no, I think they have something there, right? Once Ronaldo retires, maybe a year. Marcus Rashford, I think he's going to fill that center forward spot. Anthony Alanga on the left, Sancho on the right. I think that's going to be successful for them. They'll be top the standings in a couple of years. Tottenham Hotspur, right? How do you... Obviously, you're struggling a lot right now, winning big matches against City, but then losing to Middlesbrough. How do we, as a club at Tottenham, get to the highest level you can possibly get to, and then maintain that highest level, right? That's the question a lot of these clubs need to ask themselves. And I guess I'll do like a little prediction, or what I would do if I was in the role. If I was Chelsea, how would I move forward and maintain what I've built so far? Right? Azpilicueta is on the verge of leaving. We have Rudiger, who might leave, depending on whether he's re-signed or not. We have Conte and Kovacic, relative. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do Chelsea. I'll do Barcelona, because this episode is about Barcelona. Traore, I believe he's on loan. How do you replace Traore when his loan is up? Do you buy him? Or do you bring in a player right now that can kind of fill that role of Traore when it's time for Traore to leave? I think the best bet to doing something like that, you might want to bring in... Well, Traore is a very unique player. He's big, he's strong, fast. It's very difficult to find a winger at that to fill that. I might, instead of Traore, I might bring in a guy like Anthony, who's very quick, agile, good acceleration, good top pace, similar to that of Traore. Physicality, maybe not, but I think if you bring in Anthony from Ajax, he may be able to fill that role pretty well, because he has similar attributes to that of Adama Traore. So that's my take on the business of football and why Barcelona aren't great at it. I think under Xavi, especially because of how much he values football and high quality football, I think that there is an opportunity for this kind of culture of bad business at Barcelona to change. Obviously, they have an incredibly good academy. So many great players have been a product of their academy. I think maybe they should utilize it a bit more. Pedri and Gavi, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. They're both members of their academy. And, obviously their academy's strong because they're a product of it. Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, they're all a product of their academy. So use your academy. Don't just buy players to replace the ones that left, because that's not productive. I'm thinking what was I gonna say? I can't remember. That's all it is, really. I appreciate you for watching, listening. I invite you to subscribe to the podcast, the channel, whatever you're on, Spotify, follow, do all that good, wonderful stuff, and cheers. Have a good one.